Hi everybody, my name is Isabel Escobedo and I'm going to be presenting about the presidential election, so the candidates and what they stand for. Obviously, election season is a time where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of indecisiveness because there's a lot of names on the ballot, especially when it comes to the presidential election. So I'm just going to be presenting to you guys the two major parties' nominees and what they believe in, so you guys can form your own ideas on the matter. I'm not going to be spending too much time on third-party candidates. I'm going to be focusing the majority of my time on the major parties. So for the third-party candidates at the bottom, you'll see those who are running. I'm not going to be spending time on them just because they are pretty easy if you look them up. But the ones that I'm going to be focusing on are obviously the Democratic nominee and the Republican nominee. So the Democratic nominee is Joe Biden. He is 77 years old. And prior to his campaign or wanting to run for president, he served 6 terms as senator from Delaware, as well as serving as President Obama's vice president during his term from 2008 to 2016. His running mate is Kamala Harris. She is 55 years old. She has served 2 terms as district attorney of San Francisco and has served as California's attorney general and is currently one of California's senator. So moving on to Donald Trump, he is 74 years old. He is a former reality TV show host and real estate developer. Something to note is that he has never ran for political office until 2016, so he doesn't really have experience with politics, and that's kind of his major thing, that he's not a typical politician. His running mate is Mike Pence. He is 61 years old. He's the 50th governor of Indiana, and it's obviously the current vice president. Something to know about Joe Biden and Donald Trump is that if either one were to be elected, that would make them the oldest president in U.S. history to be inaugurated. So now I'm going to be talking about Biden versus Trump, so they're contrasting ideals per topic. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to be talking about COVID-19, so what they believe in, how they're tackling it. So when I'm talking about Donald Trump, I'm going to be talking about present tense, so how is he tackling that now? Whereas for Joe Biden, I'm going to be talking about it in future tense, so how he would be tackling it. So Donald Trump, in February, he implemented a stringent travel, and he denied entry to foreign nations to kind of make the spread between COVID-19 between different countries a lot less accessible. However, he did say during the early months that mandatory masks were not necessary, but then later retracted that statement as soon as he became informed by physicians. Something that he also states is that the reason why there's so many people testing positive for COVID-19 is because of our testing. So he stated, do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people. So what this kind of alludes to is that he thinks that the reason why we have so many cases is because our testing is super advanced, and that is the reason why a lot of people are testing positive. And his major response to this is that he did rest a lot of the responsibility for the response to COVID-19 with the states. So he didn't necessarily do anything within the federal government to attack it, or at least not to the extent that he let the states do. So because different states have different rules, that is very prevalent in the number of COVID-19 cases. So something to note is that because states can decide for themselves, if we're looking at Florida, Disney World is open, whereas in California, Disneyland isn't open. So we see that kind of opinions on the matter, especially when it comes to the reopening of the states. He's also pushed for schools to reopen in person, and is also full supporting Operation Warp Speed, and that's basically just going as hard and just fast pedaling towards a vaccine in the beginning of January of 2021. So now focusing on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, what they really believe in is offering free testing to all Americans and also hiring of 1,000 people for contact tracing. So as soon as a person is tested and if they test positive for COVID-19, there would have specialists who were hired to track those who were infected came into contact with, so they can kind of stop the virus at its source. He's also a huge supporter for the Defense Production Act, which is the increase of production of protective equipment. So really giving first responders and everybody just the ability to have as many supplies necessary when combating COVID-19. He also wants to implement financial support and give workers paid leave if they are infected and if they are caring for someone who isn't affected. He also has stated, so this is his main quote about federal government. He states, "Federal government must act swiftly and aggressively." This kind of shows that he believes that federal government should take a larger stance when combating COVID-19, which is a huge difference between him and Donald Trump, considering that Donald Trump left much of the responsibility to the states. And this kind of ties in with his wanting to work with governors and mayors to mandate mask wearing. He also recognizes COVID-19 discrimination, which is where in lower income areas or areas where there's a majority of people of color, COVID-19 does strike a lot harder and a lot more aggressively. So he does acknowledge that and hopes to kind of solve that once he is in office. So now I'm going to be talking about the four corners, so political issues. So I have two sets of these, so we're going to be talking about 8 different political issues and their stance on it. So when talking about police reform, Joe Biden does not believe in defunding the police, so he doesn't support that. However, he does think the need of reform. And by doing this, he wants to keep the funding for police departments separate from public schools, mental health, community centers, etc. So this way, police officers can focus on their job, which is to protect the American people. He's also for community policing approach to training. So training police officers to not necessarily think of race when arresting people or when pulling them over. Donald Trump, however, has called himself president of law and order. And what this kind of means is that he doesn't necessarily have a drastic approach to police reform, which is why he is currently gaining a lot of endorsements from police departments. He has also signed, however, during his presidency, he has signed an order to have tracking programs to check officers tried for misconduct. And what this basically does is if a police officer is tried with have committed a violent act when not necessary, then they will have that kind of red flag put against them. He has also given federal grants given to police departments for nonviolent methods. So really just making sure that police departments aren't using methods that have been proven deadly over the years. When it comes to climate change, Joe Biden has proposed in 2019, he proposed this plan of spending $1.7 trillion to eliminate greenhouse gases by 2050. So really having federal funding for green technology. Something to note also is that when comparing to Donald Trump, he actually withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Accord. So this kind of comes into Joe Biden, where he wants to re-enter Paris Climate Accord. Joe Biden also wants to promote end to fossil fuel subsidies. So he really wants to take his proposal from 2019 and integrate that into his campaign and possibly his policies when he is, and if he is elected. Donald Trump, however, during his presidency, tried to open Alaska's National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas exploration. And he has also pushed for many guidelines for environmental protection to be removed. And this is because he really doesn't think that climate change is a top priority when it comes to American affairs. Now moving towards economy, Joe Biden's main pillar is to really boost middle class. So kind of integrating this idea of rewarding work, not wealth. He also wants to raise minimum wage to $15 and also repeal tax cuts done by Donald Trump. So he wants the individual income tax to be 39.5% and corporate tax rate to increase from 21% to 28%. So really taxing those who have the means to be taxed, so those who are upper class. He also focuses heavily on investing in green energy, which does come from his initial plan to spend $1.7 trillion to eliminate greenhouse gases. Donald Trump, however, has focused a lot of his time in bringing back manufacturing jobs to the US. So he really is fighting towards less federal regulation on businesses. He actually has added 470,000 manufacturing jobs. However, he did impose tax on allies and also entered us in a 2-year trade war with China. He also has resigned from Trans-Pacific Partnership. So now talking about education, Joe Biden wants to increase funding for schools in low-income areas and increase the pay of teachers and provide aid to pay off their student loans. So giving the teachers the means to pay off what they owe from them being in school themselves. He also has proposed having a $23 billion funding to close the gap between non-white school districts and school districts where the majority are people of color. He also is very into the idea of 2 years free of public college and universal preschool. So Donald Trump has actually given loan forgiveness for veterans with disabilities, but he did try to remove loan forgiveness policy for public workers. So now I'm going to be moving on to the next four corners of the political issues that they do. Okay, so talking about gun control, Joe Biden really believes in the push to ban assault weapons and also implementing the federal buyback program, which is essentially to take more guns off the shelves. And also universal background checks for everyone who tries to purchase a gun. Donald Trump, at the beginning of his presidency, he vowed action on gun violence. And since then, in 2019, he has banned bump stocks and has also implemented the red flag gun laws, which is basically when somebody has red warning signs that they shouldn't have a gun or they shouldn't carry, that they won't carry. So now talking about healthcare, Joe Biden really wants to expand Obamacare and also add a public option for healthcare. However, it will be optional because there's a lot of people who want their healthcare to be through private insurance or possibly their work covers it. So it will be optional. He also has promised that 97% of Americans will have healthcare within his presidency. When looking at Donald Trump, however, he actually wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act and has done a lot of things to do such. He has allowed states to add more requirements on certain Medicaid, which makes it a lot harder for people to go through that route and instead have to look at private healthcare or find other ways to obtain it. However, he does want to reduce drug prices and lower the price of healthcare. So when looking at immigration, Joe Biden supports pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. However, he does oppose not criminalizing illegally crossing the border. So he believes in legalizing immigrants, but not necessarily not taking action on those who come illegally. He also wants to undo Trump's policies and is a full supporter for DACA. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been very adamant about the construction of wall across the U.S. and Mexican border. He also has implemented, or during his presidency, did implement a 90-day Muslim ban when it came with those immigrating and those just coming in and out who were Muslim. He also has implemented or wants to implement a merit-based immigration system where immigrants who come into this country do it because they actually provide use to America. He also officially ended DACA. So now I have two quotes to kind of describe both Joe Biden's and Donald Trump's view on foreign policy. So Joe Biden believes in national issues first, whereas Donald Trump believes in America first. So that's all that I have for the presidential election. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, just DM us on Instagram or go to our website to find more information. Thank you guys.